What we've actually worked out is we've worked out how to take protein and phosphorus, put in a soluble form and put in the water, because all livestock have to drink every day. So then we've built hardware that measures water flow, and then we inject the supplements into the water. And then off the back of that, we have telemetry, and we monitor these doses remotely from anywhere in the world. And we're driving production and decreasing costs.
Hi, and welcome to our CEO interview series. Today, we've got the founder of DIT AgTech, Mr. Mark Peart. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here and appreciate your hospitality.
Mate, it's been the journey of a founder that's building an AgTech business in Australia. Just give us a bit of an intro, just give a bit of insight into that, because you started the business in what year?
Our first employer was 2017.
Yeah.
But the idea of a tech business and extensive agriculture goes right back to when I first started in the bush in 1985. And I've always said to people, great businesses have great backstories. So it didn't happen overnight. It's been an overnight success over 30 years.
I remember when I had some Singaporean investors come out to it was actually our emergence conference in 2019. And I remember the best comment he said was, Steve, the biggest investment opportunity right now is AgTech. And I asked him why. He goes, if you think about the amount of agriculture opportunities that are in Australia, and yet at that stage, there really wasn't any incubators for it. There wasn't any funds that were connected to it. There wasn't anyone really focused on it as an area. So if I think about you from a journey perspective, going back to 2017, what was it at that time like going out and speaking to investors, obviously recruiting and so forth, when it really wasn't a sector that
tough.
sort of exists?
It was tough, mate. It's been very tough. It's been a grind. But I think that businesses like AgTech, Climate Tech are really important. Really early on in my journey of building this business, I realised one thing, like tech disruption has been great throughout a society. There's really only been two things that's disrupted: social media and smartphones, and it's given humanity entertainment and convenience. Yeah. But when we think about Climate Tech and AgTech, well, these are really important problems we have to solve. Yeah. And I think I got to a stage in my life where I did want to do something useful. I had other businesses that were great businesses, but it wasn't driving me. I wanted something to get out of bed. And it was such a challenge when I thought about AgTech. It's extensive operations, the outback, the environment. But I get out of bed still now, mate, because I think it's important work. And all the team do too.
You just touched on it, and I'm going to bring it up. You mentioned about some of your other business. Talk about some of your other business, because I found that fascinating. When we had our conversation, you told me about one of your other businesses. I was like, I can't believe you're doing that as well as doing this as well.
Yeah, so my trades as a pilot. My story to DIT came about from any young guy. I grew up in the bush, went to Ag College, I went to the Northern Territory, and I was a stockman on a cattle station back in the 80s. I saw helicopters mustering back then, always had a love of flying. I decided that can't be too hard, so I went and got my chopper license in 88. I flew helicopters for 20 years, and it was a wonderful career. I had so much fun and everything like that. But as I said, I wanted to do something more purposeful and useful, so I sold out of my businesses. Yeah. I got into some property developing pre-GFC, made a lot of money, thought I was the smartest man in the room, but of course the universe has strange ways of humbling us, and the GFC came along, and I needed to reinvent myself. And I went and got into corporate aviation to feed the family. I was flying corporate jets for meat business. And I went back to uni and I did an MBA. I'm one of those entrepreneurs that has all the boxes. I want to tick all these things off. And one was getting an MBA. And that's where I first came across the word AgTech. And the journey started sort of very early on, was to build something that would have some legacy in my industry, and something that, I felt that I was being useful, as I said.
So now give us a bit of a summary of DIT, right? And then we'll go to the context as far as how you've actually gone about building the business and so forth. So a bit of a summary as a next step. So
Steve, really what we do is a big problem in extensive agriculture, or a big cost in extensive agriculture, is supplementation. We have been doing it for 50 years and we put lick blocks and product in a bucket that animals lick, and that gives them extra protein and phosphorus. So for most of Australia, we have to do that in extensive agriculture. What we've actually worked out is we've worked out how to take protein and phosphorus, put in a soluble form and put in the water, because all livestock have to drink every day. So then we've built hardware that measures water flow, and then we inject the supplements into the water. And then off the back of that, we have telemetry, and we monitor these doses remotely from anywhere in the world, and we're driving production and decreasing costs. That's our core business, and we call that our primary economic engine in AgTech. But we're moving into a lot of climate tech work. So I say to people, DIT is really a business that's at the nexus of AgTech and climate tech.
And how do you go about building that business? Like I imagine you deal with obviously with a lot of farms. What does that growth model actually look like for you? And then the other part is how do you then go back to that next stage as far as exporting internationally as well? Yeah.
That's one of the challenges that AgTech businesses are finding all around the world is how do you build revenues? How do you engage with farmers? You think a farmer is over 55 now, average age of a farmer. I was lucky, Steve, because I had such deep industry connections. So I knew the culture of farmers. I could communicate. I could take our offering, and I knew that we were solving a problem that they needed to solve right now. So it actually hasn't been that hard. Capital raising's been hard. Getting tech to work in the middle of nowhere, 365 days a year, cyclones, droughts, dust storms, all of those things, that's hard. But that's, you build a great team and you get the team engaged. It's amazing what you can achieve when there's real vision and purpose, and you can build that culture of innovation.
One of the things, maybe it's a bit of a story about how we come across each other, because I think it really speaks to your sort of personality. How we come across each other was that you reached out. I did an interview with one of your directors, John Diddams, and you reached out to John, and you basically started talking to him about your business. And this was during COVID. And then from that, then John did an introduction to me. And I think that sort of speaks to the sentiment of your personality in that, if you think about, as far as thinking about where you're based, here's us just doing an interview on a show. You're reaching out to him, having a conversation with him, and next thing you go, you've got someone involved with you that's highly credible, been involved in listing, dozens of companies, on the ASX, and has immediately sort of got behind the story. Now, for the next part of that, you mentioned about capital raising. How did you actually go about sort of getting introductions to investors, building that investor network? And then I suppose, how did you get skilled at articulating your story? Because I find that one of the biggest challenges for anyone who's building any sort of technology related business that's got any sort of technical aspect, they typically have a hard time summarizing it simply to investors.
I think great investors can really check out the BS in a founder. One of the things I think is founders in AgTech, I'll talk about AgTech, an investor will see whether or not you know your gig. So really understanding industry, those unit economics, that's been a big positive for us. But it was difficult, because we were sort of really early on raising money in AgTech, so VCs couldn't understand AgTech. It's a real word now. They've worked out valuation multiples. But we have had to do everything to get here, which probably goes to our DNA about being innovative. We've done 3 crowdfundings. We've been, a customer of Wholesale Investor for many years, had a lot of success. John Diddams brought along a lot of professional investors. We did convertible notes, and it hasn't been the normal path that everyone thinks that a startup becomes a growth company for us. So capital raising has been difficult.
What is a normal path? That's what I always find. It's it's so funny. I get frustrated sometimes in this space where a lot of people think that capital raising is create a pitch deck, send it out to angels and VCs, and then wait for money to come back in.
So true. It's not, and I think great businesses have great backstories, and really that raising that capital and how you innovate to do that goes a lot towards the DNA of the business and the future success. But it is hard. It is hard.
But going the next thing I'd say is, if you're thinking about where Australia is at right now, like how many funds are there that are actually dedicated to AgTech?
Yeah, not enough. But surprising in the last few years that they are starting to, pop their heads up, and people have. I think what's happening is investors, especially these large funds, are really starting to see that they have a responsibility around ESG, but more so they have a responsibility to take investors' money and invest it impactfully. And what a great place is AgTech, climate tech. So, we have a lot of people reaching out to us now who are saying, we want to put our money where we can make a difference. We believe that AgTech, climate tech are important businesses for the future of humanity and the sustainability of the planet. And that's like wonderful news to me, because all of a sudden, we're starting to get.
Do you find that a lot of farmers are also looking at how they can also support AgTech companies as well?
Yeah, a lot of people say to me that farmers aren't doing that. So I don't. I would disagree with that. I actually think that farmers have been our biggest supporter. It's important that you engage with the right farmers in any sector. But we have some wonderful customers, all the largest corporates, and they want to see us succeed. They want us to continue to innovate and help them to enhance their operations, to enhance their sustainability. So we've had nothing but support from our customers, and our customers are the biggest corporates in this country, and that's been testament, I think, to the team and to the opportunities and the solutions that we are creating for our customers.
And over the next 5 years, like as a final question, what do you see for AgTech over the next 5 years? How do you see it evolving? What types of opportunities do you think would be the ones where sort of get the most traction with investors, and that pathway, I suppose, to exits?
Yeah. So we talk a lot about that at a board level of what it's going to look like. I think in the next few years, we're probably going to see some failures in AgTech. Yeah. I think we're seeing great little businesses that might have been maybe too novel. The farmers, it wasn't really solving a problem now. Maybe in 10 years, I think we'll start to see consolidation in the sector. Some of the big agribusiness corporations will start absorbing these companies. However, I'm a great believer that the opportunity in AgTech and climate tech, we will also see in the coming decades some truly huge businesses. Yeah. And because they are providing something impactful to the planet and humanity. And I think as investors, we're seeing in DIT, investors are wanting to put their investment in a business that's going to make a difference. When we talk about exits, I'm not your typical founder that wants to sell the business in 5 years and buy a white boat and retire in the Caribbean. My aim is to work in this business till the day of my last breath. But I say to the team, let's build a business that's here in 100 years. Yeah. Let's build a business that's as synonymous as BHP and Qantas. That's a good thing to do to get out of bed every morning.
I love it, Mark. And from our side, we get to work with many founders, and working with you guys, you really get to see, number one, what resilience looks like. You get to see what a founder who looks to create opportunities for yourself, the way in which you've created different, like your fund and so forth, and also just created new layers of opportunity for the business. And I think it's obviously it goes back to your own sort of business skill sets, but the part that I love about working with founders is where, firstly, how you figure out the problem that you're going to solve, but then how you create all the different layers of opportunities that go along with that. And people's version of the different setbacks we have basically become your opportunity. Yeah, for sure. And, likewise, we've had a great relationship with Wholesale Investor. I'm a great supporter of the platform. It's been very good for DIT. And people ask me about our association with Wholesale Investor. I say it's a tool. It's a great tool. You still got to do the work. I always have to.
Steve will connect you, but you still got to do the work yourself. You got to make sure you're working. You got to be out there with your investors, and it's hard work. Got to get out of bed every day, put your foot on the accelerator.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Great to see you.